Okay. Oh, what the? What is going on? My video. All right. Can you guys hear me? I know my screen's going crazy. It's like some kind of an acid trip or something. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Everybody can hear me. Is the audio coming in okay? All right. That looks like it's a little bit. All right. So my guest tonight, I was going to have a guest on. One of my old friends, not old, I've just known her forever. We were going to talk about raising your kids in the last days. We had all kinds of stuff set up. I have notes over here. She's got like 3 pages of notes. I mean, we were pretty much queued up. The only thing we were trying to get through was the audio issues with both of us having poor connectivity issues. So between that and then getting connected from a smartphone to a laptop through Zoom to YouTube was just a bit too much for us tonight. So what I'm going to do, I have I guess I can open it up to Q&A for a little bit. I know folks, I've been telling folks that we're going to be doing tonight. I'm going to try and do them every Monday night as often as I can. So with my friend Sharon, I'm going to reschedule. We're going to shoot again for next Monday. And hopefully we'll get together Sunday and hopefully we can get our audio stuff worked out that day and figure out a good platform for her to use so that we can do this. And we'll try it again next Monday night. But all right. I'll open it up to questions right now. I was going to read something, but if you guys want to, if you have any questions or you want to throw anything at me, you can. Tonight will be pretty short. I know Brother Chooch is coming on tonight at some point. I think he usually runs his pretty late though, so I'm not sure if he's coming on at 10 or if he's coming on a little bit later. But he usually does a late show. Let's see. What's up, Brother Tim? Tim Gaines in the house. If you guys haven't got a chance to check out, he's on several different shows. Brother Tim is, and he is a good wealth of knowledge. Him and his programs are usually pretty cool to watch. I did see one question here and got Zach in the house. Thank you, Carly, Anita. Who else is on tonight? Thank you guys for moderating. Somebody said a question here. It says, what are your thoughts over all this AI? Well, I think AI is a tool like anything else. Obviously, it's been sensationalized with things like, the Terminator, all of the sci-fi shows. I think it's 2001, an Odyssey, or the one where it has Hal in there, and the Hal takes over the system and becomes homicidal. But I mean, in reality, AI is just a computer programming. We're trying to give it the best of our ability. We're trying to make it sentient. Not us, but the folks that have the means to do it, and they're trying to create a sentient program, as like Frankenstein. We're Frankenstein, and they're Frankenstein's monster. So I think that there's a lot of potential for that to go very, very bad for everybody. So again, it's a tool, but I think it's something that the Antichrist and Satan will use after the rapture of the church. Tyler and I did 3 series on this, pretty in-depth series on here, Antichrist, AI Matrix, and there's 2 more. And basically it was all the potential abuses that could be used by AI. All right. And make sure everything's going. Okay, I'm getting my questions in here. Let's see. From Don, what do you think of what's under Antarctica? Any thoughts? Yes. Well, Lee Brainerd and I went to the Ark encounter here in Kentucky just this past weekend, and we were just talking about the antediluvian world and the way things were back then. And one of the things that he brought up that was a good point, I used to believe in Pangea, which is where if you read Genesis 1, let's see, I believe it's Genesis 1:26. Not 1:26. It is Genesis 1:9. It says, and then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And that's one of those passages that often gets overlooked. You kind of just read through it. You don't really think about it. But when it says when all the waters were gathered together in one place, that would also mean that the land is together in one place, right? And so there is this idea that there was a supercontinent prior to the flood, and that at this point in time, the land was all relatively flat. I'm sure there were hills and things like that, but there wasn't like the big mountain ranges like we see today with like the Rockies or the Himalayas. And the world was in a very temperate climate, and the waters were in one area and the land was in one area. And that during the flood, not only did it rain 40 days and 40 nights, but the water came up from underground. It says that in the text. And when it did that, I believe it created fractures, cracks within the crust and the mantle, not the mantle, but the crust and the surface of the earth, that basically allowed for all this water that was underneath the land to now come up on top. And where the water was, where it once was below the earth, and now it's come above the earth, that land would have sank and would have collapsed in like sinkholes, if you will. And that's where we largely see the world today. We see these really, really deep parts of the earth is where the water is collected, and the land, as the land went down, it also pushed land up, and that's the land, the continents that we have today. Now, Antarctica, if this idea is true, and there's a lot of theologians and scientists and everybody else that does believe it's true, Antarctica would have been a very vibrant, lush tropical place. It would not have been the snow caps, right? And also, we also know that at a certain point in time, the Earth's axis was thrown off the Earth was thrown off its axis by 23.5 degrees, and it creates these climates, these extremely cold climates from the North and in the South Pole. So there's probably something under there that maybe an ancient civilization that was lost before the flood, but now is just buried under tons and tons of ice and snow. And we're probably not going to see that until after God restores the earth after the second coming. So hopefully that answers that question. So at one point in time, I think there was something there. I don't think it's anything we're going to be able to discover this side of the rapture. Do you think we can get raptured this year? Yeah, I mean, I think any day is a good candidate for the rapture. And something I was thinking about today was that it's going to come at a time that we don't expect it, right? And I was thinking, okay, so we're looking at 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026 as, I would call them, high watch years. I mean, what if the Lord doesn't come until 2027, and we've all been really hyped up and watching it, waiting for it to happen in 2026? And I'm not trying to bum anybody out and get a bunch of stone thrown at me, but I'm saying is that we wouldn't expect it at that point. If these high watch dates come and go, then our guard is let down a little bit, and then boom, it can happen, or it could happen sooner than we think. It's really, all we know right now is that we're coming up on the 2000th anniversary of the last time the Lord was on the earth physically. And I think that's significant. I think it holds a theological significance when you compare it with, or when you marry it up with, say, Hosea 6 and Psalm 90. When you compare it with Matthew 24, with the fig tree generation, with Israel coming back into her land, with the rapid onslaught of technology that we've seen. We have the technology now to go into the time of the tribulation, and for that system to take over. I mean, it wouldn't take much. Really, all they're waiting on right now is the crisis. They need the right crisis for this to happen. So we're no longer waiting on that technology to happen. We're not even really waiting on the geopolitical situation to happen. It seems to be forming up very quickly. And I'll be on Thursday with Pablo. We'll be talking about the 10 Kings. And I think we are starting to see, through the World Economic Forum, we're seeing this globalist organization grooming leaders around the world. And they've groomed a lot of leaders, but they're grooming people. It seems like they're grooming them to take over at some point. So I think there's probably, several hundred that have gone through the young global leaders program there. And, really we're just looking for 10, and they're probably 10. We don't even know who they are yet. I mean, I don't think it's going to be any of our current crop of leaders. Like, I don't see Trudeau being one of them. I mean, he could be, theoretically. He's a big enough weasel to do that, but he's highly unpopular. And I think most of the leaders that we're seeing today, Macron, even Zelensky and all these other guys, are very unpopular. I mean, they're popular within their little cohorts, but writ large, they're not well received. So these 10 kings could be titans of industry. They could be CEOs of major companies and organizations. I'm not saying it's Elon Musk, but it could be somebody like Elon Musk who has got his fingers into everything: technology, economics, politics. And it could be 10 guys like that just get picked to kind of get appointed to take over certain regions of the world after the rapture of the church. Okay, here's a new question. Where do you place Ezekiel 38? So for a long time, I've always held that I believe that there was a gap between the rapture and then the official start of the 70th week. But as time has gone on and the further and further we get into this time now, where it just seems like, one little crisis and we could be there. I think that gap is getting smaller and smaller, but I do see that the Gog Magog war is before the official start of the 7th, and I think it serves as a precursor to the peace covenant that's enforced in Daniel 9:27, as well as it removes Russia and Turkey and Iran from the equation of this new global order. Because what we're seeing right now, and we're seeing it even in Ukraine, is that, and even with Putin's speech a few days ago, where he's just blasting the West for, he considers us very corrupted and very fallen. And what we're seeing now is this clash of two civilizations, where the East, and I would call the East, like, say, Russia and all of the former Soviet satellite states, and China, North Korea, Iran, Turkey, they view them, they don't want to fall under this new World Economic Forum global system. They don't want to fall under the Great Reset. They don't want to be a part of the Agenda 2030. They don't want anything to do with that. So there's these two civilizations that are clashing right now. So I think one of them, the East, is going to basically take a beating in Ezekiel 38, and that empowers the West to go ahead and expand out and to do this 10 region, 10 global, not global, but this 10 imperial regional government structure that basically is what we see going into the 70th week of Daniel. And then we see the rise of the rider on the white horse, who is the Antichrist, or the beast system itself. And then we have, I think, the rider on the red horse, when its piece is taken from the earth, that is going to be those remnants that don't want to be a part of the system. They're fighting back, and it's just going to be a war all over the place. So we know ultimately that the Antichrist will win. We know the beast system will take over. But it'll come at a very high cost, and by the time that this is all said and done, within the seal judgments, 2 billion people will have died. All right. So to answer that question again, yes, I see it happens before the 70th week begins, because I think it also is one of the precursors for the temple to be rebuilt on the Mount of Olives, or on the Temple Mount. Okay. Question. What have you heard about drone swarms and how it may relate to Bible prophecy? Well, I've known about drone swarm technology, military, and I used to teach a class on this back in 2016, 2017. But I know Britt Gillette talks about it a lot, and I think there's a lot of merit to what he's talking about in terms of the threat it possesses. And there was a video on YouTube, and if I find it, I'll link it to when I post this to my website. But it shows how they used drones, swarms, to do assassinations. To basically, I mean, they could literally shut an entire city down. You couldn't even fly jets against it, because these things would just fly up into the engines, and fought out. We call it fought. It would burn out those engines of jets, or of helicopters, of any type of aircraft that comes against it. And I think the only kind of really way to fight against swarm technology is if you had some kind of EMP. So, okay, from Rose, where do you see U.S. headed when Biden signs away our sovereignty in our health decisions to the WHO on Wednesday? So this is a one of those there, it's kind of like a symptom, right? It's with we talked about this last week, I believe, where we're waiting. It seems like the other shoe's always about to drop, and everything is about to go really, really sideways, and then it doesn't. He may signal that he is going to do that, but then something will happen. Congress will get involved. The states will, something will change the paradigm in this, and then we'll just keep going on. Now he could sign it on Wednesday. He could sign it in a way that it doesn't really have any type of real to it in the present, but it may be something that is significant after the rapture of the church, and then the U.S. is collapsing and all of this stuff's going on. This may be one of those things they use after the fact, but I don't know. It just feels like, last year we were waiting for the diesel shortages, and we were waiting for that to collapse the economy, and it didn't. We're waiting on the food shortages to really shut the economy down, and it hasn't. We're waiting on all these things, and we keep getting red alerts and threats, and people are saying, hey, that we have 2 months left of this, and we have 6 months left of that, and we're at the end, and then things just kind of keep going on. And I was making mention to this. I was saying that it feels like the Holy Spirit is the restrainer. Not that it feels like he is the restrainer, but it feels like he's not only supernaturally restraining the spirit of Antichrist across the world, because if he hadn't been restraining Satan, I believe Satan would have already set up some system. I mean, we'd be in like the Third Reich. We'd be under some global Nazi regime already since World War II. But it seems like the restraint against wholesale evil is not the only thing that he is restraining. He's also restraining technology from men going too fast. He's restraining those globalist agendas from moving forward faster than they want to. I mean, they would have done this 20 years ago if they could. I mean, George H.W. Bush would have done this back in the 90s if he could have, with his repeated calls for a new world order. And it just feels like the Holy Spirit is not just restraining evil, and not just restraining the spirit of Antichrist, and not just restraining man from progressing too fast technologically, but he's also restraining our collapse. He's not letting it happen. Our collapse is in an appointed time and place, just like it says in Acts 17:26, that God sets the times and the boundaries for nations. As much as we like to think we can affect that, God already has a date in mind. He has a day in mind when the United States is going to fall apart. And I believe that just because of the position we've been in for the last 70 something years, and the world moves in our orbit right now, in terms of the global economy, global finance, global military, all of that, everybody moves around our orbit. And, I know people accuse us of having, Amerocentric prophetic eyes. True, the world of America at this point in time, but that day is coming to an end, and we see that we're seeing the collapsing of our empire. So how far does it collapse before God pulls the plug on the United States and allows us to become the global crisis that they need us to be, the these guys that are pushing for a new world order. All right. Next question. Tell me what you think about CERN. It's from Joe. I've been studying CERN for a while. I'm by no means things come to mind. I think, and I had a friend of mine that worked there, believe it or not, back in Kansas. He was an engineer. He was there, a few months out of the year doing, a contract work and stuff. So he wasn't like high up in it, but he was, involved with helping it, function and run. And I think at probably the lower echelons of people that are involved in CERN, whether they're scientists or engineers or astronomers or physicists or, all these guys, that they think they're doing a good thing. Excuse me. They think they're doing a good thing. They think that they are advancing science and advancing mankind to something good. But I think that the people at the very top echelons have ulterior motives, and they want to use this thing for something else. And as there's a guy, Sergio Bertolucci, or something to that, his name is something like that. He made a famous quote years ago saying that, we're going to open a door and we might be able to push something through it, or something might come out of it. We don't really know. I think that there are people involved in CERN that have ulterior motives. They want to open up some kind of dimensional portal or a doorway or a gate, like a Stargate kind of thing. And I'm not saying that all of them think that way, but I do believe there's enough people in the upper echelons that believe that it can open up something, that they've invested billions and billions of dollars. And what's interesting to me about CERN is how they've just attributed so much pagan stuff to it. This pagan ceremony they did at the entrance to the one of the tunnels going under there. They've done it with the Hindu statue. I think it's Vishnu, the one with all the arms and stuff, the destroyer of worlds. It sits out front very prominently. It was a gift from the nation of India. There's just a lot of pagan stuff associated with it. So I don't think it's something from God. I think it's man is reaching really far, and I think that they are trying to. The people that ultimately run that place and that are funding it, I think, have high hopes that it will open something up, and it could open something up. In Revelation 9, we see that there is an opening in the abyss, and like locusts come out. I think it's the fifth trumpet judgment. I don't know if they come out of there, but I think that when man tries to do these kind of things, it doesn't turn out well for us. Let's see. Discern truth. Do you think the Antichrist, resurrected Nimrod, or the false prophet will walk off of a UFO? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think he will, or they will. But I would not be surprised if a UFO lands and says, not necessarily take me to your leader, but they're gonna probably give homage to whoever the Antichrist is, as he's the chosen one. And something, I was thinking of too, and I can't remember if I talked about this last week or not, but Christ's ministry was 3.5 years, and we know that the Antichrist rules as the man of sin for 3.5 years. So if you put those two together, that's 7 years. And I think maybe part of the lie is where the Antichrist comes out and says that he is the Christ, or he is the Messiah, and or he comes to be hailed, and basically he's going to use this 3.5 year reign as the completion of Jesus' first 3.5 years. And then at a certain point, he gets assassinated, and then Satan resurrects him after Satan is cast out of heaven. And, when we think about Satan being cast out of heaven, that just means right now we've got scripture, two different scriptures that talk about Satan being in heaven as the accuser of the brethren. He's there accusing us day and night. But then we see passages in Peter where he's going about the earth, roaming about the earth, seeking whom he may devour. Right. So at this present time, Satan has access to heaven, and he is there accusing the brethren. And I believe that when the midpoint, when he is cast out of heaven, he loses all access to this dimension that heaven lies in, or lays in, or resides in. So he is now completely earthbound and can no longer traverse the universe like he used to. So now he has great fury, and he inhabits this man, resurrects this man, Antichrist, and he is going to be like this incarnation, and just like Christ was, where he is 100% God, 100% man. With the Antichrist will be at that point the son of perdition for 3.5 years. He will be 100% man, 100% Satan. So it'll be kind of like a perverse version of the incarnation. Sandra Dunn, question: what happens to people who have never heard the gospel, like people in a remote area? Will they go up? I don't think they will, but I think that with the 144,000 that go out, with the two witnesses, with the two angels, lasting gospel, I think many people, especially when it talks about that in Revelation 7, that there'll be a number that nobody can count, of all tribes, tongues, nations, that those people that had, we would call them unchurched or pagan cultures, will have their eyes opened at that point. It's gonna be a very supernatural time. And most pagan cultures, their whole thing is the supernatural. They kind of revolve around the supernatural. So, if you think about an Indian tribe, that they would ascribe things to the supernatural that we would look at and think, well, that doesn't, we don't believe it because we're Westerners. We've become so educated. We've just lost that ability to use those kind of eyes. But the Indians there won't even have to do that. It'll be very much a time of supernatural will become the norm at that point. Okay. Casey, what do you think happens to our pets who are like children to some of us when we are raptured? I cannot imagine the Lord would just leave them here to starve. I know we have 8 dogs. So I think about this a lot. And before, I don't think pets go up in the rapture. In fact, I'm pretty positive that they don't. Pretend to know what will happen to them if they're left behind. I pray that God will provide for them, or provide ways for them to get out and get away from harm. But I am also of the firm belief that God can also bring them back to life and to resurrect them and bring them back into the kingdom, and that they'll live with us forever in their perfect, if they're a dog, in their perfect dog form, completely healthy forever, young, vibrant. If they're cats or parrots or fish or whatever, that they will come back in their perfect form. And I think that a lot of that is, that's part of why God didn't put souls in them. There's no need to judge them, because they don't know right from wrong. They only know instinct. They only know what God programmed into them. So I think that all the injustices done to animals over the last 6,000 years, whether they've been beaten or tortured or used for science, lab experiments, or, you could just, I don't want to go there, but there's so many horrible things that have happened to animals. But I think that there will be divine justice for them as well. And I think they'll get that in the kingdom age. And it sucks to think that our pets will be left behind. And maybe they won't. I don't know. I just don't see anything in scripture that says that they'll be brought up. But we know there's tons of animals in the kingdom age. And if we can have those animals, I don't see why we couldn't have, our beloved, four-legged family members, that have comforted us and have been there for us when we're sick and when we're depressed and when we're really hurting, and they're always there providing comfort. And that's how God designed them, to provide comfort and to be our pet, to be our companions, So I do think that we'll have them again in the kingdom, and then into eternity. So whatever happens in the tribulation, I'm also of the firm belief that animals will probably go feral in the tribulation. They will not. They will be. Think about it like this: in the Garden of Eden, animals were absolutely docile. I mean, Adam and Eve named them. He was the first zoologist. He's in there naming the gorillas and the bears and the tigers, and all these animals are just completely peaceful. Not even, not just to him, but to all other creatures. And then after man sinned, God put the fear of man on them. And then furthermore, into, after the Noahic flood, I think that has kind of set the stage to what most of human history has been, where animals, for the most part, if a wild animal would, get away from you if they could. And usually wild animals only attack humans is if they feel threatened and there's no other recourse, or you just startle them and you come across them in a way that their first reaction is to attack. But I think the opposite will be the case inside of the 70th week, once the Holy Spirit's restraint is removed. Well, again, part of that restraint is what was holding back nature now is not going to hold back nature anymore. And that goes from everything from a virus to bacteria to insects to birds to dogs to cats to everything. Everything will be hostile at that point. And I think they'll sense it. I think that they sense this great wickedness that's going to come across the world, and they're going to do whatever they can to survive, because it's in their instinct to do that. And that even means our normal, family dog will now become very feral and want to survive and get away from humans. Darlene asked, any thoughts on the gap and Israel rise above the nations, mirroring Joshua thinking 2.0? Any thoughts on the gap and Israel rise above the nations, mirroring Joshua? I was just reading Joshua today. I think that the Gog Magog war we don't know exactly how this is going to play out. We're just looking at it from a general outline kind of perspective, but Gog Magog could happen either in conjunction with or simultaneous to Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus. Those things could all happen, in very close order together. So I think after Gog and Magog, I think Israel will be sitting very, very high. I think their borders will be expanded out considerably. And I don't think there'll be any political or anything, any kind of resistance to them rebuilding their third temple at that point. How that factors in with a peace treaty and how the Antichrist is able to either strengthen or confirm a treaty that's already in place, maybe the Abraham Accords, or maybe there's some new covenant that comes out here that we haven't seen yet. But I think Israel will be sitting high up until the midpoint. And just as Jesus warns in Matthew 24:15, he says, when you see the abomination that causes desolation, run, right? And then we see in Zechariah that 2/3 of Israel are going to die during this time period, and only 1/3 escapes. I've got to think that there's not a lot of Jews at this point who are even, treating Christianity or what Christ's words of warning with any kind of seriousness. I think there will be enough that escape. Whether they become Messianic Jews after the rapture happens, or they become Messianic because of the two witnesses or the 144,000, however that takes place. So it will be a portion of them that will see that, and they will remember Christ's warning, what they read, and they're gonna beat feet out of there. They're gonna get out of there and they're gonna run. And God's gonna show them where to go. And whether that's Petra or some other place, I don't know. But we know that 2/3 don't run, and they'll end up perishing in Israel. So I do think that they'll be riding high for the first, at least the first couple of years. Don asked, doesn't the Bible indicate the little horn comes out of obscurity? If yes, why do people always speculate it's someone we know? I don't believe it's on anyone's radar. I think you're right. I think we don't know who it is. I mean, it's fun to speculate on things. And I wrote in the forums, we looked at, okay, who might the 10 kings be? It doesn't say we can't know who they are. And we can look at men and maybe women who have enough geopolitical clout and enough wealth and enough influence that they would make good candidates for one of those kings. But, we don't know. But the Antichrist for sure is probably someone we don't even know who it is. But again, if you go back to what I mentioned earlier about the young global leaders that are part of the World Economic Forum, these guys and gals are being groomed for global leadership. Just like Trudeau was groomed, and other leaders have been groomed through there to carry out an agenda. There is probably some guy in there that we don't know, but nobody knows who he is, and he's moving underneath, the undercurrents, and he's just, making all the right moves right now, making all the right connections, being at the right place at the right time. And, Satan is diligently guiding him, but he may not be the only one. There may be one of many who he's doing this for. Carla asked, question, why do you believe there's a gap between the rapture and the start of the tribulation? That's a good question. Well, for one, there's nothing in 1 Thessalonians 4, John 14, 1-3, 1 Thessalonians 5, 2 Thessalonians 2, or Revelation 3:10, or any of the other traditional rapture passages that tie it specifically to a covenant that's confirmed. So I always say there's no connective tissue between the two, but there is a causality. I believe that the rapture causes the conditions to be set for the covenant to be confirmed after other things happen. But a couple of reasons why I believe there's a gap, and again, Don Koenig many years ago, he thought the gap was going to be like 11 years. It could be as long as 11 years between the rapture and the start of the 70th week. And, he's saying this back in, say, 2007, 2008, 2009, because at the time, we knew enough at the time to recognize that the world was not, wasn't ready yet. There was still so much that had to happen in order for the world to be the world of Revelation 6-19. The technology, the geopolitical players, and so on and so forth. And that was just, 13, 14 years ago. But the world now is there. There's not much left that has to happen for, if the rapture happened today, the tribulation could theoretically start within, say, All right. Am I back with you or not? Okay. Okay. Can you guys hear me? I got a thumbs up from Hermie. Is anybody else hearing me? Okay. Okay, girl. Rod Hawkins. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Hey guys, my internet here is sketchy. So there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just in the Appalachians and it is what it is. Um, I lost my train of thought, what I was saying. Oh yeah. So I mean there's things that have to happen inside of the gap. I mean that seem to need time and need the logistics and need the infrastructure and the setup to happen. And some things just take time. Building the temple will take time. It could be done very quickly from my understanding, but it can't be done instantly. Whatever this final global structure city, Babylon, whether it's the US or it's a bunch of cities that are networked together or whatever it becomes, it that takes time. The Gog and Magog war, the cleanup that has to happen takes time. So okay, I'm gonna keep going. Let's see. Steve asked, any idea how the burning of weapons will happen, and then technology? Does Israel have it yet? Again, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to take place in terms of the logistics of burning these weapons. Because we're looking at the weapons of today, and those are like AK-40s. Let's just say this is Russia. Come on. Let's just say, Russia has AK-47s, they have tanks, they have a lot of metal weapons, weapons made out of metal, depleted uranium, um, all of that. How does that get burnt? I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that it does. But then simultaneous to that, you've got Ezekiel describing them coming on horses and shields and bucklers and he's describing these weapons in the terms of the weapons of his day. Yeah. So anyways, yeah. Okay, Dave Clark, question: the vision of the four chariots in Zechariah 6 in the millennial kingdom. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and read it. It's been a while since I read Zechariah 6 and Zechariah 1. But I do know that it seems like the horses in Zechariah 1 aren't a bad thing. They're more like watchers. And then, I don't know. And that's one of those things that is so out there that when you ask 10 people what they are, you get 10 different answers. They don't seem evil in that sense, like the horsemen and the seal judgments. So, and then again here with Zechariah 6, let me read that. 6. And then I turned and raised my eyes and looked, and behold, 4 chariots were coming from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of bronze. And with the first chariot were red horses, with the second chariot black horses, with the third chariot white horses, and with the fourth chariot dappled horses, strong steeds. Then I answered and said to the angel who talked with me, "What are these, my Lord?" And the angel answered and said to me, "These are 4 spirits of heaven who go out from their station before the Lord of all the earth. The one with the black horses is going to the north country, and the white are going after them, and the dappled are going toward the south country. And the strong steeds went out eager to go, that they might walk to and fro throughout the earth. And he said, Go walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro throughout the earth. And he called to me and spoke to me, saying, See, those who go toward the north country have given rest to my spirit in the north country. Yeah, I have no idea. But you know what's cool is that we've had the Bible for 2,000 years. And if you go back, let's just say we went back 100 years or even 50 years, and people were reading Revelation 13 or Revelation 11, and they're trying to see how can the whole world see 2 guys' body lying in the street. They couldn't get there. They didn't have they were limited by the technology of their day and the illumination of their day. They just couldn't see it. Or how can one man control all buying and selling in the world? They couldn't see it. Now we can see it now because we know that we have the technology, and we know not just the mark of the beast, but the whole system, the whole world's networked together through the internet and through digital currency and so on. It's not a mystery to us anymore. But Zechariah 6 and Zechariah 1, those are still mysteries to us. We haven't got there yet. But that's cool that we've had the Bible for this long, and that some of these things we still just like scratch our head and we're like, I have no idea. We'll know one day here soon. Question: You may not want to get too political. Do you think there are 2 actual political parties, or are they 2 birds of the same feather giving the illusion of democracy? I think that they're 2 wings of the same bird, but I do think that there are people primarily within one party that really want to do the right thing, but they're the minority, even in their own party. And they give just enough pushback on things that, I mean, we're still going off the cliff, but we're kind of like tapping the brakes a little bit, trying to slow down. And when the other party's in charge, we're just hitting the gas, and they're just trying to go as fast as they can. But the other party takes over. They tap the brakes, and then you've got some of the other folks that are really wanting to do the right thing. They're pushing the knee down a little harder so that the foot goes into the brake a little harder. But we're still going over the cliff. Rafiki, in Revelation 20:13, the sea gave up the dead who were in it. What do you think this means? Well, I think that the bodies, just like Christians during the rapture are going to be given their glorified bodies, and Christians that have already died, their bodies are going to resurrect first, and their spirit bodies are in now in heaven, because to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So they're present with the Lord, and their bodies are in the earth, decomposing, or dirt or whatever. God's going to molecule by molecule resurrect those bodies and bring them up. They're going to be rejoined, and they're going to become this new immortal glorified bodies. The unrighteous who have died, they're currently in Sheol, in hell, in their spirit, right? Or in their, you want to call it their soul, right? They're down there in their soul, and they're being tormented in their soul. But at the great white throne judgment, they are going to be given their immortal bodies, not glorified, but just bodies that can't die. And they're going to stand in judgment there at the great white throne judgment in front of God, their creator. And they're going to be cast alive into the lake of fire in these immortal bodies that can never die, but can feel pain, can feel everything. Everything is going to be amplified. You think about it this way, we are going to feel colors and smells and taste and see things and hear things that we are limited to in this body. We can't even understand them in this body that we're in now. Much in the same way, like when you have a dog whistle and you blow a dog whistle, you and I can't hear it, but the dogs can hear it, right? It's on this certain wave, octave or wavelength, that sound wave that we can't, it's above what we can hear for 99.9% of humans. But all of our senses are going to be amplified to the nth degree. Every attribute of us is going to be perfected to the nth degree. Those people that are cast alive into hell are going to be in these immortal bodies too, that can never die. And their senses are going to be amplified to the nth degree. But they're going to be tossed into a place where God is not there. And if God is love and God is light and God is happiness and God is joy and God is peace and God is comfort and God is pleasure and God is, everything good that we can think of, remove everything good, and that is where the lake of fire is going to be. Plus, it's a burning lake. And this fire isn't going to be the kind of fire that gives off light. It's just going to be eternal flames that don't give off light, but it burn with incredible heat. And these people are going to be burning, feeling every lick of flame for all eternity in these bodies that can't die, that can't be destroyed. But just like Second Thessalonians chapter 1 says, it says there's this eternal destruction. They're eternally being destroyed. And that's a horrifying thought. And that's why we should be motivated to go out and share the gospel with everybody that we can. And if nothing else, we plant seeds. We try to find ways into people. We try to reach them. We try to connect with them, create relationships so that we can present the gospel to them. And some people are very hostile to it. I've met a couple of people here that are not very friendly to it, but I'm their friend. I try to be Christ-like to them, and I try and show them the love of Christ to people that want to have nothing to do with it. So I think you do what you can, I think it says Tyler. Many think 2030 is possible for Christ's return. Given Russia realistically isn't months away from launching Gog and Magog war in a possible gap period, isn't his return likely beyond 2030? Yes. Randy Nettles, who writes on my website too, he, a while back, I was very agnostic in terms of what year I thought Christ crucifixion was. I thought it was, either 30, 31, 32, 33. I wasn't really settled on any one year, but going through his research, I'm pretty much convinced that it's 33. And we know the tribulation 7 years. So 33 minus 7, that puts it at 2026. So when Tyler and I did the final 4, we're looking at the years between 23 and 26, including the year 23 and including the entire year of 26. I think the rapture's in that window somewhere, realistically. But that would put the second coming at, 2033. So that would be beyond 2030. And to me, 2030 is the kind of the year that they've been really hyper focused on for their Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset and the launching of the fourth industrial revolution or the culmination of it, whatever. So the world seems very focused on 2030. So, that could be the midpoint. Voice of Truth. Pete, question. What's your take on Thursday crucifixion? We just talked about this. So it would be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and rose on the third day. Yeah. I'm okay with a Thursday resurrection. I'd have to go back and look at how the feast fit into that timeline and the calendar and all that. But I know that Christ, I don't know how you can spin it. I know Catholics spin it a certain way, but they call it Good Friday. I just don't see how you get 3 days out of Friday, Saturday. So yeah, I'm okay with a Thursday crucifixion. Epiphany, Luke 23:30, it says that they will begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. Do you think this could be a reference to bunkers? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that the military has created, the U.S. military has created these deep underground military bunker systems, or DUMS. You have the very, very wealthy people have, these really just crazy built up bunker systems. When they're preparing for where they're going to go when the world starts to collapse or whatever, they've got their bug out places. So they're going to go as deep as they can in the ground to get away from what's going on the earth. And they think they're going to be able to hide out there. And a lot of post-trib folks believe that too. They've got their bunker set up. They've got all their storage, food storage, and they think they're going to be able to survive what's this storm that's going to come, except this storm isn't going to be like anything that they've ever experienced before. It's going to be the full weight of Satan coming against anybody that opposes his system. And your bunkers are not going to protect you from demons. You got to remember, once the rapture happens and the restraints removed, demons are going to flood the earth. And they're not hidden. I mean, they're not going to be held back by an underground bunker. And they're spirits. They can go anywhere they want. And all they have to do is find out where your bunker is, which they probably would know almost instantly. And they would go up there and direct the military forces, no matter how well hidden your bunkers are. And they're just going to say it's right there. And this demon-possessed army captain or commander is going to say, yep, start, digging here, or launch the drones, or put a bomb, stick a bomb down there and just blow the entrance up so that they're caved in. I mean, there's not going to be a way to fight that. Revelation 13:7 makes it very clear that the Antichrist is going to conquer the entire world and take over everybody. Question: what role will the Nephilim play in the tribulation? I don't think we'll have giants again. And I think Lee and I were talking about this week because we're seeing stuff on the Nephilim there at the Ark Encounter. There's no need for it. There's no need for giants. I mean, giants are just bigger targets, right? Like, when giants were on the earth before and people were fighting with spears and shields and swords and things like that, giants obviously had a huge advantage. But now we live in a day and age with, machine guns and Apache helicopters, attack helicopters, missiles, hypersonic missiles and drones. And I mean, being a giant just means you're a bigger target to shoot at, and it's much easier to kill you. I think what the Nephilim, what they're trying to glean from the DNA that they've been able to find and manipulate and use, is they're trying to create super soldiers, and they're trying to create guys like Captain America. And they're wanting to use that to make, give it to the elite to have superpowers, beyond human powers, whatever that, whatever you want to think of it as. But I don't think it's necessarily we're going to see giants roaming around the earth again. I think it's going to be used to augment humans the way we are now, but give them super strength, super speed, super intelligence, so on and so forth. Okay. from Lynette. When Matthew 24 says there will be a return to the days of Noah, do you believe that includes Nephilim? I believe it includes superhumans or enhanced humans. And we'll get that genetic, what we've been missing all these years has been this missing link, right? The missing link isn't a caveman, it is a Nephilim. And that's to take man where he is today and augment him so that he has become more than human down the road. Patrick, question, who are the they that try to mingle with the seed of men in Daniel, iron mixed with clay? I know the popular answer is watchers, angels, fallen angels. Let's read that. I haven't read it in a while. Daniel. Says, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the part that it's privy to there. Let's see. Okay. Verse 42, and as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly clay, or partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. I kind of have mixed emotions on this passage because on one hand, I believe this has to do with transhumanism. I think that to me that we see I'm not just saying that because transhumanism is a thing today. It's become a reality in our day, or something that men are aspiring to achieve. But the iron and clay, and where we are today with trying to put machinery and computer systems into the human body, leads me to believe that might have something to do with it. But I also believe that fallen angels can possess things, systems, computer programs, AI, chatbots. They may possess these systems that men put into their bodies, but it's not working to some degree. And it could be that these fallen angels also try to do a recreation of Genesis 6, because at this point, the reason that I think that they were prohibited or self-censoring themselves from doing this after Genesis 6, because of how horrific the punishment was for those angels at the time who did those things. They were tossed into Tartarus, the lowest, very lowest part of hell. And as we see with the demon-possessed man in the Gadarenes, I believe, when Jesus is even walking up, they were like, "Whoa, what have you to do with us, Son of the Most High God? Have you come to torment us before our time?" Like they knew who he was, and they knew what authority he had. He could have just said it, and they would have instantly been in the bottom of hell, the very underneath even the worst parts. They're at the very worst parts. They didn't want to go there, but yet they were possessing a man. So I don't know what it means. It could mean that transhumanism aspect to it, and that the fallen angels possess the machinery that are embedded into human bodies. It could mean that they are trying to physically manifest into people, whether sexually or some other way. But I think they know they don't have enough time to, get women pregnant and then have those children to be born. And, I don't know. They've got to know that this is 7 years too. They're going to know that their time is short. They're not going to have enough time to sire offspring that are going to take 20 years, 30 years to grow. So, hopefully that answers the question. Please explain Revelation 10 and 11, or excuse me, Revelation 2, 10 and 11. Revelation 2. So this is one of the churches. 7 letters to the 7 churches. It is, let's see, probably Smyrna, not Smyrna. Smyrna. Do not fear any of those things which you're about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and you will have tribulation 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. And he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death. So the church of Smyrna was the persecuted church. And even the root word of the name Smyrna, you get the word myrrh, which when you have to crush myrrh in order to release the fragrance. And that's what they used to put on dead bodies to cover the smell. The 10 days, I believe, refers to the 10 periods of intense persecution that they suffered, that the early church suffered. Because we see the persecution begins with Nero, and then it continues with Trajan, Emperor Trajan, then Emperor Domitian. And then if you count in Vespasian and Titus Vespasian, who sieged Jerusalem and killed 1 million Jews. I mean, I don't know if he's included in that, but then you have Domitian, who was another terrible emperor. And then you have other emperors throughout the next 2 centuries, going all the way to Diocletian. And Diocletian was the emperor that ruled right before Constantine. And Diocletian is the only emperor that retired. Most of the other emperors were killed, or they died and died on the throne. But Diocletian had so wiped out Christianity in the Roman Empire. And I don't mean he wiped out. I mean, he destroyed every church. He burned every copy of a Bible that he could get a hold of. And that's why we have hardly any original copies. I don't think we have any original copies of the Greek New Testament after Diocletian ruled. I mean, his purging was so thorough and exhaustive. I mean, 10 years dedicated to wiping out Christianity, that he retired at the end of it. But of course, he didn't wipe out Christianity. Then right after him, Constantine came in and legalized it. So, but there was 10 emperors that ruled during those 2.5 centuries. That I believe that's what these 10 days refer to. And the church of Smyrna was one of the 2 churches that Christ had nothing negative to say. The other church that Christ had nothing negative to say to was the church of Philadelphia. And whereas Smyrna wasn't promised deliverance, they were going to have to suffer through that, but they would get the crown of life. The church of Philadelphia is promised deliverance, because now this time of testing would go across the entire world. And of course, there's nothing historically that fits that picture. So we know that this is still future. So hopefully that answers that question. And Annie asked, Pete, do you think AI in the 4th Industrial Revolution is the iron, clay, and Daniel? I think it does. I think Tom Hughes and I both kind of lean on the same understanding of it, that it's putting these systems into people. But we see, one of the interesting things is that we see by the, I think it's the first bowl judgment, that the people that have these marks, the mark of the beast, they become these huge, just grievous sores. Whether you have it on your forehead or you have it in your hand, on the outside of your hand, they become these just oozing, smelly, nasty sores that I think that to me kind of ties in with that they don't cleave together. So Okay, Kathy, do you consider it a sign of the nearness of the rapture that there are many there are currently so many like-minded watchmen proclaiming the gospel and encouraging the brethren? That is a great question. I do. And here's something that's interesting to me. And when I was staying with some friends this weekend, I think I mentioned it to them. We think back to, say, 2017. I don't know when being woke became a thing necessarily. I can't remember what year exactly it started. It was kind of just becoming a thing at that time. But as all the traditional forms of entertainment that we've become reliant upon over the last 20, 30 years, whether it's television, sports, movies, books, even traditionally family friendly things have now just been given over to the spirit of wokeness. It's driven Christians away from those forms of entertainment. And simultaneous to that, you have a crop of young men and women who've risen up and have begin getting on YouTube and begin speaking on things and their websites and Rumble and all these other platforms. And that a lot of Christians today, they don't even turn on TV anymore. They just watch who they like on YouTube. They're going and being fed and being edified, and they're in there communing with other like-minded believers, just like we're doing tonight. I'm not anybody special. I'm not a superstar or anything like that. I'm just a normal guy that God is, beyond my understanding, is using he's using my passion for this to share the gospel and share a warning to the world that the time is drawing close to an end. And so that's how the people spend Friday nights, or they spend Saturday nights or Monday nights or whatever. And I know there's a lot of people here tonight. I don't even know how many people are in the chat right now. I don't know, maybe 100 people or something. But, you go to Tyler's program or Chooch or whoever, and there's, 2,000 people on. We are a fragment of a percent of the world that's watching right now for the Lord's return. We're just a small, tiny speck of humanity that are watching and waiting for the Lord to return. I know that it seems like a lot of people here, we're all kind of like-minded, but most of the world is not watching and waiting for the Lord to return. I would say most of the professing Christian world is not watching and waiting for the Lord to return. I think across all of, Christianity, whether you think about, let's just say Christianity, let's look at it as like 100% of let's just say 100%. I would say probably about 50 to 60% believe Christ will return at some point. They have some general understanding that Christ will come back again someday. But I think most of them, there's probably only less than 5% of us that think that it's going to be soon, like within a few years or less. I think most of the world thinks it's still, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years away. I'm talking to normal, really solid Christians who just don't see it. They just say, people have been saying Christ is going to return forever, and so for them, it's just one of those things that it'll happen when it happens. And it doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. Not even in their lifetimes. So, yeah, but I think that God has raised this group up here, and that we have global reach right now. People are, all over the world on here, and God is using us at this time, to get the message out there. So I do think it's a sign. Absolutely. K-Mac says, timing of rapture not made clear in scripture. How can we be sure it is pre-trib? Well, I think that there's a few different ways you can look at it. For one, we know that the wrath of God is all 7 years. It's not just half of it. It's not just 3/4 of it. Jesus in Revelation 5 is the only one in the entire universe that is found worthy to take the scroll from the right hand of the Father, to begin to open the seal judgments. And when he opens these judgments, a quarter of the world's population is going to die. The seal judgments are not going to be a walk in the park. These are things that Christ is doing. And at the seventh judgment, that triggers the 7 trumpets. And at the end of the 7 trumpets, that triggers the 7 bowls of wrath. So these are all God's wrath. This is not Satan's wrath. This is not man's wrath, not the Antichrist wrath. God is the one that's doing all this, right? So the church, the body of Christ, we are the body of Christ. Christ is the head. We are his body. If Christ is the one that is initiating the wrath, is he going to initiate and pour out wrath upon himself? The logical and biblical answer is no. Therefore, we have to be removed prior to him doing this. And if that were the only thing, it still would be a valid enough reason for that to be true. But we have like bonuses and bonuses and bonuses of things that reinforce this idea. One, if the church was destined to go through the tribulation, any portion of it, then we would see clear instruction in the epistles for how to survive it. But that would then contradict Revelation that says that people won't survive it, that Christians won't survive this, or the saints won't survive this. Revelation 13:7 says that the Antichrist, these saints are given over to him, these tribulation saints. They're going to be slaughtered. Revelation 6, the 5th seal judgment, is the cry of the martyrs. People are going to be, from just countless numbers, are going to be martyred. We see them again in Revelation 7. They are going to be below the throne, or beneath the throne, or the altar, asking how much longer is it going to be until God avenges them. And there's going to be countless numbers from all tribes, tongues, nations. These are saints that have come to faith after the rapture, and they're going to be slaughtered. So if that's true, then how can Revelation 3:10 be true when it says that the church, the ecclesia, the Christians, are going to be kept from the hour, not even just from the tribulation, but from even the hour, the time of testing? So, what I'm going to say here too, and I don't want to offend anybody, but you can make the Bible say whatever you want it to say, but it's very difficult to have a very consistent view across every doctrine, across every span of scripture when you do that. I could say, handling snakes is something that every church should do because it's mentioned in Mark 16. In that we demonstrate true faith by handling snakes, poisonous snakes. So to reinforce it, I need to go to other places in the scripture to see, okay, well, where is this applicable to the church? Well, we don't see it. We see that some of the apostles had supernatural powers, but that seems to wane the further time goes on. And toward the end, Paul is not even able to heal Timothy, Whereas before, the shadow of Peter and the shadow of Paul, even if they walked past a sick person, that person would stand up and be like, they're healed, So you can make the Bible say whatever you want it to say, but the only way something is true if it's consistently true across every other aspect of every other doctrine, every other passage, and so forth. So you look at true, solid biblical understanding as a foundation that a Christian stands upon. And for me, that would be like looking at Genesis chapter 1, where you see that God created the heavens and the earth. He created man in his image. He created man with a purpose. Man was given something to do. He had a purpose, a reason to exist. He created woman out of man to be his helpmate. And then that both man and woman sinned and they rebelled against God. And then sin now becomes this inheritance that every man inherits through their own birth, and that we're born into sin. And it's something that we can't work our way out of. We can't earn our own righteousness because we can't ever meet that perfect standard that God has. That's a foundation that we see in in Genesis in the first 3 chapters. And that also that God's going to provide a way out. And then you have the doctrines like pillars that hold up the walls and the roof. And those are things like Christology, pneumatology, the study of the Holy Spirit, soteriology, the study of salvation, ecclesiology, the study of the church, the Trinity, eternal security for the believer. All of these things, kind of make these pillars, and you have the Old Testament and the New Testament. And then on top of that, you have for the roof, you have eschatology, you have the last study of last things. In order for something to be biblically true, it has to be true not just in that one area, it has to be true across every other area. So if the pre-trib rapture is true, then I should see examples of this in the Old Testament. Noah wasn't delivered, or he wasn't rescued halfway through the flood. He wasn't on some mountaintop putting the last nails in, and the waters are coming up, and he just barely makes it inside. He crawls in through a window at the top. No, the judgment didn't even start until he was safely and his family were safe and secure on the ark, and then God shut the door after the animals were in, after everything was done. And some people say, well, Noah wasn't, rescued off the earth. Well, I mean, that wasn't God's plan at the time. God knew that Noah was going to have to restart the human race. It wouldn't make any sense to rapture Noah off the earth if he needed Noah to come back to earth and restart the human race. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So the rescue has to be proportionate to whatever the judgment of the wrath is. Likewise, Lot, the angels told Lot and his family, we can't do anything until we get you out of here. Lot wasn't rescued. Lot wasn't taken down into a bunker under his house there while the firestorm came and rained fire and brimstone on Sodom. He was delivered out of there before the judgment came. These are the 2 most prominent examples that we see of divine wrath in the Old Testament. And these are the 2 examples that Jesus uses in Luke 17 when he says, it will be like the days of Noah and the days of Lot will be like the days of the Son of Man when he comes. So again, that reinforces the pre-tribulation rapture. And another thing is, when you have the book of Revelation, which is a book of prophecy, and it says in Revelation 1:19, write the things that you have seen, the things that are, and the things which shall take place after. So the things that John saw was the glorified Christ in chapter 1. The things that are were the churches, the 7 churches. And by the time John received this revelation, it was 95 AD. So we're already like 65 years into the church age. And there are hundreds and hundreds of churches all around the Mediterranean, the Roman Empire, maybe thousands. The church is mentioned 19 times. The word ecclesia is used 19 times in Revelation 1-3, and then it's not used again. I mean, it is an argument from silence, but it's a very loud argument from silence and a very obvious one. So, I mean, everywhere you look, the Bible points to pre-trib rapture. So, okay, I'm going to beat that dead horse enough. Kathy asked, do you think that we, the redeemed, will be present to witness the white throne judgment? I do. I think we'll be there. I mean, I think we'll be in our glorified bodies at that point, and it will be, God we will agree 100% with God, but we'll probably look out through the audience and see, through those people, and we'll see people that we know. I don't know how that will be, but it's a sobering thought. Question: 2 Peter 1:19 talks about the day dawning and the morning star rises in our hearts. Do you think that is referencing the rapture, and will we start glowing? Kind of joking about the glowing part. Yeah, I think it does, and I think Lee Brainerd talks a lot about this. I never really paid much attention to this until Lee brought it to my attention, but he absolutely sees that as a picture of the rapture, and I do think we'll glow. I think we will be, what's the word? Iridescent. I mean, we will just exude Christ and God's glory. We'll reflect it. I think if we ran into our own versions of ourselves, like if my own glorified version of myself came in the door, I would probably fall over with a heart attack. Like, wow, even if I knew it was me. And you would probably too, because you just wouldn't be able to take it. So it's kind of a crazy thought. Peony question: what do you think about the connection between Joseph and Jesus? And Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver, and Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Oh, that is 2030. That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. That is very interesting. I don't know what it means, but the correlation there is interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. And there's so many little cool things like that in the Bible that just boggle the mind, and it just reinforces this idea that this book is very supernatural. It is the most supernatural book that's ever graced the hands of man. And what's funny to me is when I wrote the Luciferian dialectic, I'm having to read a lot about these grimoires and these big dark occult books on magic and summoning demons and things, but they don't hold a candle to the Bible. Don asks, will the released demons be locked up watchers? I don't know. I think probably some of them. If you read the book of Enoch or take it seriously to any degree, there was only 200 angels, fallen angels, that committed sexual acts with humans to create the Nephilim. But I think it was probably much more widespread than that. I mean, you got to figure the population before the flood was in the billions. So we're probably talking tens of thousands of fallen angels that participated in this perversion, where they abandoned their first estate and went after strange flesh. If there were billions and billions of people on the earth prior to the flood, which I believe there were, just doing rudimentary math, and you're doing the percent, at this percent birth rate, at this percent birth rate, at the minimum, it was like 700 million people at, say, 1%. And then if you were to go up to, I forget the percentage of it, it was like 3% or 4% birth rate. You're talking trillions, not trillions, I'm sorry, really high billions, 15 billion people, 19 billion people on the planet before the flood. And think about our world today. At the year 1900, the global population was 2 billion. Here we are in 2023, and we've just crossed over into 8 billion. So we've grown by 6 billion people in 100 years. If you look back at the days leading up to the flood, from Adam to Noah's flood was about 1,600 years, 1,650 years, somewhere in the neighborhood. And people lived for centuries and centuries and centuries. I mean, you could have, think about how many kids you could have during that time. I mean, there was a lot of people on the earth prior to the flood. And I'd have to think that there was a lot more fallen angels than just 200, hanging out on Mount Hermon doing bad things. I think it was quite a bit. Question: There were not many people who were rescued from the wrath in the times of Noah and Lot. The church rapture may be small number after the full apostasy of the church. Yeah, I mean, I've always used 10% as a number to look at in terms of 10% of the population, but I honestly don't know. I mean, how many people do you and I know that are truly born again Christians? I mean, we only know what we see. And there's probably a lot of people out there that are Christians and we don't even know they're Christian because they don't act like Christians. I mean, I spent 15 years as a prodigal son, and if people saw me, I'm sure they didn't think I was a Christian. So, I mean, we don't know. I use 10% on the low end. It's a conservative number, but even 10% is 33 million Americans. I'm just talking Christians, born again believers. I'm not even talking children and the mentally invalid invalids and those who can't make decisions for themselves, etc. So it could be upwards of 30-40% that get raptured from, at least from America. And then, around the world, depending on the nation you live in, that number could go up and down. But what's interesting about Americans and being raptured, and why we kind of focus on that, is that in America, you could hold any position in any profession and be a born again evangelical Christian. Now, you used to. Now it's becoming harder and harder because of the way that this soft persecution is coming against Christians. So if you hold to a Christian view and you're a doctor and you're not on board with abortion, I mean, they're going to look to move you out of that position if you're in a hospital or you're a professor or whatever. So that's obviously happening. So I think Satan is trying to cut his losses. Why this wokeness is why we have it, is because we have so many Christians spread throughout every social strata in America that when we collapse, it'll be felt all over. If you go to a place like China, where if you're a born again Christian, you may only be able to be at the bottom of the social system there. They're not going to be as impacted as we are, because we're going to have everybody from doctors and professors, lawyers, law enforcement, military, politicians, head CEOs, vice presidents, and everything in between, nurses, truck drivers, all of that. When that gets all pulled out, I mean, you're pulling it out from every aspect of our social strata. Other countries, Christians are at the very bottom. So when they get pulled out, it doesn't impact that country as bad. Okay. Wow, there's a ton of questions. Okay. The last question is, okay, I see your end here. Okay, thank you. Let's see. There were not, let's see, I read that one. Isaiah 24:20 talks about the earth staggering like a sluggard. Do you think this indicates the pole shift before Jesus' second coming? Yeah, I think the earth is going to be rocked to and fro. You're talking about earthquakes that are so powerful that it levels islands and mountains. I would not be surprised if it's even more significant than a pole shift, but the actual realignment of the earth. So the earth is at 23 degrees off kilter because of something that happened in the past. I mean, it could be that we're brought back straight up and down by the end of it, Lucy, do you think there is set time for the fullness of the Gentiles to be complete and then the rapture happens? What is your understanding of this verse? Fullness of the Gentiles. So Luke 21, let's see. Luke 21:24, it says, and they will fall by the edge of the sword, and they will be led captive into all nations. Speaking of the Jews there. And during the the days of 70 AD. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. There's that passage, which I believe speaks to the way the world's been thus far. And we've seen Gentiles trampling all over Jerusalem for the last 2,000 years. And then we got Romans 11 that speaks to the fullness. So one is more of a geopolitical aspect of it, a flavor to it. And this other one speaks to a spiritual nature. For I do not desire, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own opinion, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. I know that some people have said that, one of my mentors, Jack Kelly, years ago taught that the term fullness meant like a ship coming in, right? I don't know if there's one last Gentile that has to be saved in order for the end to come. It could be that, but it could also be just like in Acts 17:26, where it talks about how God predetermines the boundaries and times of nations and of empires. And it could be that fullness, because if you go back to like Galatians 4 and 5, let me read that real quick, because I think that to me makes more sense than waiting on a specific number. Let's see here. Here it is. It says, but when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. And I hope the audio comes out on all this. I'm like turning my head away from the microphone and everything. The fullness of time in relation to that passage in Galatians 4, when Jesus came the first time, that phrase is so pregnant with meaning and things inside of it that it's fascinating to consider. Why did Jesus come when he did the first time? Well, he came the first time was because that was right at the start of the rise of the Roman Empire as a true empire, with the Caesar, with that imperial control over the entire area, the region. They were still greatly impacted by Greek culture, so everybody was speaking Koine Greek, or the common Greek. There was road networks. There was, the Roman roads were everywhere. Pax Romana was in force all throughout the empire. If you were a citizen, you had just, you had rights and beyond that were enviable by everybody if you were a true citizen, which is why they, when they locked up Paul and they had him, bound up, and then he said, I'm a citizen, and they immediately got the guards immediately freaked out, like, oh man, we just did a really bad thing, so they let him go. But there was that time was perfect for the spread of the gospel to go forth. That was the fullness of times, right? In that sense, it was the perfect conditions for the gospel to spread from Jerusalem to throughout Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth, from that center point where, the Roman Empire was. The times were perfect. It was the perfect time for Christ to come, for the Messiah to come. I also think we're at, again, this fullness in terms of technology, in terms of the conditions are just right for the rapture of the church to happen and for everything to fall in place, just like the Bible says it will. So I kind of look at it both ways. There's a geopolitical sense to this fullness, and there's also a spiritual sense to this fullness. And it could very well be that there is one last Gentile, although we know inside of the the tribulation, there's going to be a huge harvest of souls inside of it. But there may be one last person, and there will be one last person eventually, who is that last person that becomes a believer in Jesus Christ, that is wrapped up into the church. So I kind of think it's both ways. I kind of think it's a geopolitical, and it's also the spiritual fullness. Hopefully that is clear or makes sense. We know, according to Scripture, that there will be a new heaven and a new earth. In eternity with imperishable bodies, will we have access to both? I am of the belief, like Lee Brainerd has a really fantastic book called The New Heaven, the New Earth, renovation or recreation. Is it going to be a completely new earth, or is it going to be the same earth that's purified by fire? And I am of the belief that it's going to be the same earth purified by fire. The same sun, the same moon, the stars and the planets. I mean, this universe is going to be purified and cleansed, but the earth that we live in now, where the saints have bled, where Christ walked, where the sea was parted for the Israelites, where the ark rests, this earth has meaning and significance to it, to God, because there's so much precious things here. When I say precious, I mean where Christ was crucified, where his blood dropped into the earth, and so on and so forth. But there's a ton of passages throughout Scripture that speak to the eternality of the earth and to the eternality of the moon and the sun and the stars and the throne of David and Jerusalem and so on and so forth. So, but I do think we'll be on this earth. I'm trying to make sure I got her question right. But I think that we will not be bound to this earth. Just like angels today aren't bound to this earth. They can traverse, between realms and dimensions and realities. I think even more so that we will have access to this. I don't even know if it's just in the universe. I mean, it could be realities that God has been building new worlds and new everything for us. I mean, there'll be so much to explore and do. And just, we can travel at the speed of thought if we want to. You could be at the far reaches of some distant reality in a universe 10 times removed, and you're there on some foreign planet just looking at God's majesty there, something you've never seen before. You think, you know what? I just want to go back and sit on a beach off the coast of California, or what used to be California. I don't know what it'll be called then, and then you're there. You can just think about it and you're back to where you were. And then you could go back, you could just travel. And I mean, we'll never be bored. You got to think about it. We'll be with God for all of eternity. And we will never exhaust the end of God. We will never reach the end of God, ever. And that is a particularly, just exciting thought to me. All right. Last one. Oh man. Yeah. Thank you guys for tonight. I have a couple things working against me. I'm limited by the internet where I'm at. I can't do anything about that. And then I'm limited by my understanding of moving between Zoom and YouTube. And it's not just as easy as you would think. So hopefully next Monday, I will have my friend Sharon on with me. And Sharon is a very dear friend. We grew up together. I've known her for 30 something years. And we're going to be talking about raising kids in the last days. What does that mean? What does that look like? I know a lot of people in the audience, you may not have kids, or you may have grandkids. But for those of us who have young kids, what are the challenges? What are the things that we're looking at? How is it more different today than it was, say, 30 years ago when I was growing up? So we're going to be talking about a lot of this, and I think there's a lot of good stuff we can look at and bring out, and hopefully it's passed on to younger parents and so on and so forth. So thank you guys for tonight. Again, I wish one of these days when I get back to my home, I have very, very fast internet. It just got upgraded, and I'll have the best programs all until then. So thank you guys. Thank you, moderators. I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody that's come on tonight. I love you all. I pray for you. I just ask that you guys, times are going to get hard, and they're going to get darker and more difficult for believers to stand. But we just got to lean into the storm. I say that all the time, but it's true. You got to lean into the storm. You got to set your jaw, fix your eyes on Christ, and get serious about your faith. So no more fence sitting, no more right in the middle of the road. Now is the time to take your stand, and now it's time to share the gospel in any way you can with your friends and your family, even at the cost of them laughing at you or making fun of you, or just you never know what seed is going to get planted or take root. Something you say, something you do about this, and God's able to use that to trigger a memory either before or after the rapture. So thank you guys. I believe Brother Chooch is on. I think he's on, but if not, see you guys on Thursday. I'll be on with Pablo, Serpents and Doves, talking about the 10 Kings. I don't know the exact time yet, but it should be, I don't know, earlier than it is now. So God bless. And Maranatha.